It was New Year's Eve, and I was on my way to my parents' house in rural northwestern Ontario. I was raised in a small town where traditions meant everything, and one of the traditions that had stuck with me since I was a kid was ice fishing with my dad and his friends. It had always been something special. While everyone else celebrated with noise, fireworks, and crowds, we embraced the stillness of nature, finding peace on a frozen lake. But this year, it was different. My dad had passed away a few years ago, and my brother had long since moved to Chicago. But I wasn't going to let that stop me. I was determined to keep this tradition alive, even if it meant going alone. I wasn't truly alone, though. My two best friends, Nate and Trevor, rugged types who lived for the outdoors, were always up for an adventure. As we packed into Nate's truck that evening, the excitement was palpable. The forecast had promised clear skies, so we were ready for a night under the stars with the sound of ice cracking beneath us. The drive was as rugged as you could get. Snow-laden roads winding through thick woods, barely lit by the dim headlights. There was something about the way the snow fell, heavy and soft, that made everything seem muted and tranquil. That was until we pulled up to our usual spot near the lake, where we always set up our gear. The truck's tires crunched on the frozen ground, and we were about to step out when I saw him. There, standing a few yards from our truck, was a man bundled up in heavy winter gear. He wasn't moving, just staring at our vehicle. I shook it off at first. Maybe he was just another angler, waiting for a friend. But then I noticed something. His eyes kept darting from our truck to his phone, then back to us, almost as if he were calculating something. I muttered to Nate and Trevor, "That guy's creeping me out." Nate glanced up but said nothing, while Trevor just shrugged. We thought it was no big deal and went about unloading the gear. But then, without warning, the man rushed toward us, arms flailing in panic. "Help!" My buddy fell through the ice. His voice was frantic. "We need to hurry." Without thinking, we all followed him, instinctively trusting him despite that gnawing feeling in my gut. He didn't give us time to question. We just started running after him, heading toward the more remote part of the lake. I began to notice something wasn't right. Why was he leading us away from the safe, more frequented part of the lake? Why didn't he mention anything about knowing where the ice was thick? As we reached the lake's edge, I saw two other men standing there. They weren't dressed for ice fishing. They weren't moving. They just stood still, watching us. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In each of their hands was a gun. "Stop right there," one of them barked. The second man raised his weapon and aimed it directly at me. I froze, and my heart skipped a beat. Nothing can prepare you for the sight of a gun pointed straight at you. It was a gut-wrenching, suffocating feeling, like the world was collapsing in on me. My thoughts raced. What were these men doing here? Why? I glanced at my friends. We were all in shock, completely caught off guard. The man who had led us here, the one who claimed his friend fell through the ice, turned to face us. A smug grin crept across his face. "It's a setup," Nate hissed, his voice low but full of disbelief. The two men with the guns demanded everything we had on us. Our phones, wallets, keys. Nate, visibly shaking with anger and fear, tossed his keys to them without hesitation. We all emptied our pockets. I tried to keep a hold of my phone, but one of them snatched it out of my hand before I could react. For a brief moment, I was furious. Who were these people? Why us? But I couldn't act on my anger. We were at their mercy. They ushered us back toward the trail, guns still raised, while one of the men sped off in Nate's truck. The other two backed away into the woods, presumably toward their vehicle, leaving us standing there, shivering in the snow. I don't know how we made it through that moment. I honestly felt like my life had just been flipped upside down. We had no way to get back, no way to call for help. Not until Nate somehow pulled out his phone, which we'd assumed they'd taken. He had hidden it in his pocket, and somehow, against all odds, there was still a faint signal. Nate called the police as quickly as he could. They advised us to stay put. It felt like an eternity, standing there in the cold, waiting for help to arrive. We huddled together, all of us still processing what had just happened. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to make sense of it all. Why would these men be out in the middle of nowhere, on New Year's Eve no less? Was this a random act of violence, or were we targeted? They had no way of knowing we were coming. How could they have planned this? By the time the police arrived, subscribe our channel and I will meet you with another true ghost story.